Governor Jared Polis posted a Facebook post last night, and he talked about one of the constituents that died. Now, any death, of course, is tragic, and he addressed that, and he mourns the death of this guy. Now, I've never heard of this guy that died, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Now, he died of COVID, and this guy was an anti-vaxxer. Now, it wouldn't be a Democrat if he didn't take the time to wallow and celebrate this man's death. But of course, he takes the politician's way out and uses somebody else's words to do it. But as a true politician, at the top of his post, he says he mourns his death. Let's go ahead and look at this post, because just like every politician, he uses politicians' words. He says, the virus takes good people from us. It takes bad people from us. And at this point, it mostly just takes unprepared people from us who haven't gotten the effective life-saving vaccine. Now, let me just say right up front, and I'm just going to look you right in the camera, right in the lens, and just tell you, I am not anti-vaccine. In fact, I'm pro-vaccine. There's lots of vaccines I've had throughout my life. This particular vaccine I've chosen not to get because of the implications that it may have on my heart. Recently, in the last few years, my health has gone down. Well, through fault of my own and through bad decisions. I unfortunately have gotten to the point where I have a bad heart. Now, because of those bad decisions, and I'm not faulting anybody else, I can't put something in my body that could compromise my heart. Now, the vaccines that are out currently have been proven to potentially, possibly hurt people's hearts. It's not a risk that I could put myself and my family in the risk. There's also some religious implications with these that I am not willing to compromise on. So that's my personal choice, and that's where I'm going with that. But Jared Polis takes the politician's way out and says it's life-saving. Now, what he doesn't also address, which is another politician's thing that they're doing right now, is they're not mentioning any of the other effective treatments that study after study after study after study is proving could have been prophylactic treatments. And I'm not even going to mention the names because that can get me pulled off of the platforms. But there's prophylactic treatments that we could have potentially been using for a long time that he could have mentioned in his post, but he didn't do that. He chose not to do that. I'm not even talking about the horse dewormer. I'm talking about other ones that are better and highly effective. Or like myself, could use a whole lot more exercise, but that's not what's being promoted. He's talking about a vaccine that his buddies, his very rich buddies, and this governor is a multimillionaire that's benefiting, maybe not him personally, but his buddies in big pharma are benefiting from. That he's promoting this big pharma push. And why is this? Now he's taking this politician's way out, and let's look at this post. As governor of Colorado, I mourn each and every loss and deeply express my sincere condolences on the death of Bob Inyart to his wife, Cheryl. Now, I have no idea who Bob Inyart is. I've never actually heard of him. This is the first time I've ever heard of him. This post last night, and I'm sitting there on my couch, and I'm wondering who the heck this guy is. Apparently, he's a pastor of some kind. He's a radio guy. I don't even know or care to know. I don't care to look him up because, and I'm going to take Jared Polis's and this hit piece from Raw Story that this Colorado pastor who mocked him and mocked the AIDS deaths and spread vaccine conspiracy theories and deaths. And I did read this here. I read this last night. So I'll just take their word for it and not the family's word. I'll just take their caricature of him. I'll go from that. So we'll go with their phrasing of him. Okay. All right. So that's just, I'll just go with that assumption. Let's just assume he's an evil person like these guys are putting it as. Now, a governor should be representative of the whole state, even though he's only probably elected with a half or maybe just over half of the people that voted. He should be better than that. He should rise above the politics, but he doesn't do that here in this post. What he does do is start using other people's words to really attack this guy. Now he's like, I am not saying this. Other people are saying this, but he's writing this from his Facebook post. And he's furthering a divide that's clearly this country's divided. And speaking as a pastor, a former pastor at least, and speaking to somebody that's a conservative that has regularly been thrown insults at, and I've been called a racist by even people super close to me that knows that I'm not a racist, and people that knows that I have worked with gay people and knows that I have worked with people that have had HIV, that knows that I have so much love and compassion for anybody that I've ever been around, still throw these insults at me because they don't agree with my politics or they don't agree with whatever I said on my podcasts in the past, or they don't be, and it's the way to shut down debate. It's the way to really help themselves out. It's the way of transference. It's the way of really trying to force acceptance of themselves. And I understand that to a point. I do. Because when somebody rejects you, it hurts. I get that personally. I have personal friends or personal, people around me that have rejected who I am as a conservative. And you're like, dude, why don't you accept me for who I am? So when somebody like this guy is calling somebody nasty things, I get that. And so you lash out. And that's exactly what Polis is doing. But as the highest elected official in the state of Colorado, Polis really should rise above this. And he didn't do that. He chose the scumbag way out. And this is what he posts. Non-governors can be more emotional with their own sincere feelings. Meaning I'm saying this, but I'm using other people's words. That's what this speak is saying. Broadcaster Dan Savage tweeted at that he actually teared up at the news, saying that's a lie. He didn't actually tear up. That's just me tweeting out something, virtue signaling that this is what I'm doing, so I can get retweets and tweets and likes, and so that's what he did. My friends who died of AIDS were mocked and condemned by this asshole and others like him, each and every one of my dear friends who've been first in line, who would have been first in line to get vaccinated against HIV to protect themselves and others. And others. He's making a point that they would have protected themselves and others with the HIV. And they're also implying of COVID. Not just themselves, and this guy couldn't be bothered, and this guy just couldn't be bothered to get vaccinated against COVID, even to protect himself. He encouraged others to protect themselves at risk. Okay, that was badly written. But anyways, to put others at risk, he was the moral equivalent of some asshole poking holes in condoms in the 1986. Okay. Or in 1986. No, it's not the moral equivalency. Now, is this guy a real jerk, or in their words, an asshole? And this is the Polis's words, even though he's using somebody else's word. Polis, the governor of the state of Colorado, is using somebody else's words to call a dead guy an asshole. So he's calling a dead guy an asshole by using somebody else's words. So this dead guy being an asshole, maybe he is an asshole. All right. So that now that that's established, it's not the moral equivalency. Is it wrong for this guy to be saying, hey, don't put this in your body? Yeah, sure, maybe. Is it the moral equivalency of poking a hole into a condom? No. And here's why. HIV that leads to AIDS is highly infectious, leads to almost certain death. Now, obviously, the cocktails and stuff that is nearly sustainable and highly treatable. There's also different affections and things like that. They're not the same. They're not the same. They're not the moral equivalency. This is a respiratory disease. COVID is highly treatable. Now, if you catch it, especially if you catch it early, if you let it go on too long, there's obviously circumstances where you catch it and people go down here quickly. I have personally had friends that have died from it. So I am not saying that it is 100% good. The vaccine can help, sure, or whatever. I'm not here to argue the efficacy of the vaccines and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I'm not against the vaccine, but to say that it's the moral equivalency is just not true. You go on to say, and I actually want to address this. You go on to say in the bottom, this third paragraph here, and I think this is really important too. This guy who filed a lawsuit against Colorado's COVID restrictions, only to have a Trump-appointed judge grant a temporary restraining order that allowed indoor churches to open the masses without having to wear masks. How many people caught the virus because of that irresponsible lawsuit? All right. There's several things in here, and I'm going to address each of them. Of course you would bring up Trump, because you're not a typical liberal with Trump derangement syndrome. You just can't do it. You can't bring up something like this, even though Trump is very pro-vaccine. And he has offered the administration to come out and in his big rallies that he's still having, Trump everywhere, he's still promoting the vaccine. So just the idea that Trump is anti-vaccine or Trumpers are very anti-vaccine, this idea is kind of silly to me. There's plenty of pro-Trump people that are very pro-vaccine. I'm not even a pro-Trumper guy. I'm just not like that. That's not who I am. Just all these things. But to say pro-Trump, or to have a Trump appointed and to try to blame this whole thing on Trump is just ridiculous. All right, so let's get past that part. And this guy temporarily restraining this order that allowed indoor churches, as if this is not a violation, massive violation on our First Amendment rights. You violated our First Amendment rights, Governor. That should be a big problem to you. You should have looked yourself in the mirror when these rulings came down. If they were, and by the way, the Supreme Court knocked this bullcrap down too, and they came from Obama appointees, Clinton appointees. They were ruled unconstitutional rulings and edicts from dictators like you. So yours wasn't the only one. California wasn't the only one. And in fact, there's probably going to be lawsuits from churches around the area in Colorado that you're going to have to pay out as a state, because churches around the area suffered financial loss because you shut them down. And that has been paved way by churches out in California and other places around the country. So you're going to have to face the music on this, Governor Polis. It doesn't matter who appointed it. The fact of the matter is you violated constitutional law, the law that you swore to uphold when you took office. By your constant enacting of executive order after executive order and shutting us down after shutting us down. And by the way, those executive orders were supposed to sunset, and you kept ordering it and ordering it and ordering it. You're supposed to actually go, and you know what? I know a little thing about the Colorado Constitution, and you're actually supposed to go and ask for permission from the Colorado legislature. Did you actually do that, Governor? Oh, no, you never did that. Interesting. But because we have a Democrat-controlled legislature, they didn't actually do anything. So did you break the law again? Did you do it a bunch of times because you just kept enacting an executive order after executive order after executive order? It's really interesting, isn't it? How many times did you break the law and break our First Amendment rights in Colorado? It was quite a few, wasn't it? But you don't want to talk about that. You want to bring up Trump. Somebody that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but you want to bring up Trump. And you want to quote somebody, and you want to call this dead guy who could be an asshole, but you want to call him an asshole. You want to use somebody else's words to do it so you can just get away with it, you politician, you. Jared Polis, you, sir, are an asshole.